Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk about WandaVision Season 1, Episode 7, entitled Breaking the Fourth Wall. This is just a great show. I know I sound like a broken record, and for you youngsters, records are things that we used to have before CDs. CDs are the things we used to have before MP3s. This is just a great show. I can't say that about every show on television these days. Star Trek Discovery, not a great show. Star Trek Picard, not a great show. Even Batwoman, which I like, I can't say it's a great show. This is a great show. It's firing, on all cylinders. It's just great. But let's get into it. They called it Breaking the Fourth Wall because throughout the episode, Wanda and other characters are featured in little vignettes, little interview segments that you see on reality shows where they comment on what's happening in the episode. And that's a fourth wall break, where, the narrative of the story is broken and the characters speak as though they know there's an audience. And speak directly to the audience. Very early on, in like the first few minutes, Wanda is seen in one of these interview segments, and she mentions how she did, in fact, intentionally create the fake reality that she and everybody in Westview is living in. And then the opening theme song, which basically just kept using her name and not Vision's until the end, lists her as the creators, as created by. So any doubt anybody might have had up to this point that she is in fact the person who created this is now gone. She intentionally created it. It wasn't even an accident. So that has just been firmly established into the story, which I thought was good. Also, right away, we see that objects around Wanda and even objects that she's using are changing. They're not staying, the same exact object. Like milk cartons changed to a milk bottle, I think was one of the things that changed. Her TV changed from one type of TV to another. I think a lamp changed from one type of lamp to another. The kids' game changed from one type to another, to another, to another. I just put this up, or chalk this up to stress on the system, as it were, now that the Nexus is so much bigger, the Hex rather, is so much bigger. I think even more things are now out of her direct control because she can only manage so much, in the background. And the bigger the Hex is, the more there is to manage, the less manageable everything becomes. So I think that's what's happening. I think it also might just be a sign of stress on her as a person, regardless of the size. It might just be an indication that she's stressing out and, for that reason is not able to control everything as tightly as she was. And we're going to see how bad that gets, if in fact it gets any worse, in the final 2 episodes of this season. But I predicted this would happen, that eventually, she might lose control. Although I don't know if I predicted that specifically, but I did say that, the size of the Nexus, or the Matrix, I keep using that word because it's going to come up later. The size of the Hex was, so big, even before the expansion, that some of the stuff was not functioning properly, like people and objects, towards the outer reaches of it. And now it's happening closer to her because it's just so big and there's so much to manage. So I kind of saw this coming. I don't know if I said it out loud, but I think I did, and I kind of saw it coming. Anyway, we get to see Darcy now on the inside of the Hex. And first I want to say she looked fantastic in that escape artist outfit. Oh my goodness. I was a little confused that she was under, that she was not aware of who she really was, because she'd only been there for a minute. And, Rebecca never seemed to actually be under, or it seemed at one point that she wasn't under. And she hadn't had contact with Vision to bring her out of it. And some of the other neighbors have, shown that they're not entirely under, even though they've been there a long time. So I was surprised that she was under and that Vision had to bring her out of it. I thought it did make sense, though, that once he did bring her out of it, she, wasn't confused or anything. She realized right away where she was. And I think that's because she'd only been in there a few minutes. Whereas other people that he's brought out of it, or that one other guy anyway, was very confused, or very stressed at having been brought out of it. So that seems to vary from person to person, how under they are and so forth, which is kind of weird. Then there's a brief line that Wanda says when the kids are talking to her about Pietro. They refer to him as their uncle, and she says, "That person is not your uncle." So, yeah, I don't know what that's about. She, I guess, recognized that he's a different version of Pietro as the audience did, but up to that point, she didn't say anything, so it's kind of weird, but I guess she's finally sort of realized he's not him, although he did say, last thing I know, I was getting shot and died, and then here I am. So I don't know how he's not the same guy. I don't know. Anyway, so that line was in there. Then they do have one of their fake commercials, and this is where Nexus comes up. They advertise something called the Nexus, and in Star Trek, we know what that is. It's a sort of cosmic place, if you want to call it a place, where you can enter into any reality that you want, past, future, and so forth. And it's timeless. So I guess there's one in the Marvel universe as well, and that makes sense given what we're dealing with, a fake reality and so forth. And someone brought Pietro back, and it wasn't Wanda, at least not in person. The way she brought Vision back. So he came from somewhere. So what's this Nexus thing? What I'm saying? It's got to be kind of like the one that we saw in Star Trek. So the kids end up hanging out with Wanda. Agnes, who takes them off Wanda's hands for a little while to give her a break. And the one child who is psychic, I forget if it's Billy or Tommy or whatever, he says, I like hanging out with you, Agnes, because it's not as noisy here. You're quiet on the inside. So I was like, uh-oh, something's up with Agnes. And, I didn't know for sure what it was. I had heard rumors after last week's episode. And so I started thinking, okay, then maybe they're going to go there. A big part of this episode was how Rebecca is trying to get into the Nexus because she wants to help Wanda. She thinks that's the way to solve the problem, of all these townspeople being in the Nexus and not able to leave. And she doesn't think the solution is in, trying to kill Wanda or hurt Wanda. She thinks that if, they help Wanda in the distress that she's going through, she'll be able to come around and drop the hex and release everybody. And so she's trying to get into the hex, and for some reason she thought that she needed like a big tank type brute vehicle in order to do that, even though the last time she had gone in, she just went right in, and even though when they'd sent objects in, they had sent them in relatively easily. So I'm not sure why she thought she needed it, but she called on a friend of hers in the military to bring this vehicle, and she tries to ram her way into the hex, and it doesn't exactly work out. The hex essentially repels the vehicle after altering half of it into a pickup truck, which was really cool to see, just how strong this barrier is. It was almost unbelievable. But then she makes a run for it just by herself without the vehicle. And why she thought that would work, I don't know either, but I think she's just desperate to help Wanda and help those people. So she tried to get into the hex herself, and she manages to do it, but it was an incredible effort on her part that made it possible. Other than that, she wasn't going to get in there. And that was just a great scene. I thought that it just showed her not being willing to give up and just pushing and pushing and pushing until she went through. And the stress that they showed it putting on her was just crazy. And of course, when she comes to the other side, she has glowing eyes because, as we know, going through the barrier alters you on the molecular level. So this is probably where she's going to get her powers that we know she eventually has, because we know she becomes Captain Marvel in the comics. I just thought it was an incredible scene. And I think, Monica is just an awesome character. So the next thing we kind of see is Monica catches up with Wanda, and she starts to sort of confront her, let me help you kind of thing. This isn't right. We can help you. We can end this. What you're doing is wrong. And it was just a really good scene. Both actresses did a great job in that scene, and she almost gets Wanda to come around, but then Agnes comes along and intervenes, thinking that, or trying to make the audience think, it turns out that she thinks Wanda's being harassed. So she breaks up the conversation and pulls Wanda away. After which she brings Wanda to her place, and when Wanda asks where the kids, she says, "Oh, they're probably down in the basement playing." Followed by Wanda going down there, and what's this? It looks like some kind of lair of some kind of ne'er-do-well. And it turns out that it is. It turns out that Agnes is Agatha Harkness, as fans had long been thinking. Agatha Harkness, of course, being a witch from the Marvel Universe, who has a history with Wanda, which is something that I alluded to in my very first review of the series when I reviewed the first 2 episodes, though I didn't name her. Of course, the history of Wanda's kids, as I mentioned in that review, is that they, in the comic anyway, were formed around soul fragments of the demon Mephisto. And eventually, he reabsorbs his soul fragments, and, this, of course, terminates the children, as it were. And Wanda flips out when that occurs in the comics. And it is Agatha who eventually sort of takes pity on her and wipes her memory of the whole experience of her kids so that she can recover from the trauma. But Agatha has a long history in the comics in which she is both villain and not a villain. So what they're going to do with her exactly, we don't know. In the comics, she goes, she dates all the way back to the Salem witch trials and before. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. It's going to be interesting as well to see where her agenda is. Because she tells Wanda, she says, you didn't think you were the only magic girl in town. She seems to me to be kind of like a Loki character. I don't think she's evil necessarily, although I guess you could say Loki is, but she behaves kind of like Loki, and I personally don't think she's necessarily evil. But during this reveal that she is in fact Agatha, they show that she has sort of been manipulating things the whole time. Or as her theme song says, all along. It's been Agatha all along, messing with stuff. So I can't wait to see where it goes next week. Of course, in the post-credit scene, Rebecca can be seen opening the bulkhead to Agnes/Agatha's house and looking down into the dark room that's down there. So we're going to see, where that goes next week, is because Rebecca's not going to give up, right? She's going to pursue this situation. So I'm looking forward to next week. Interestingly, this episode, the reveal of Agnes and the Agnes theme song, the Agatha theme song rather, seems to have impressed a lot of people. They really like this song. I thought it was cute. I didn't think it was anything special, but apparently it's kind of blown up in the Twitterverse or on the interwebs. And I guess the song is available on Spotify now. I guess a lot of the songs from the show are available on Spotify. I didn't know that. But yeah. Anyway, that's episode 7. There are 2 more episodes left. I'm wondering if this is going to end in a cliffhanger because I can't see them wrapping this all up in 2 episodes, especially if they're only going to be about 30, 40 minutes. So I think we're going to end on a cliffhanger. I don't think it's going to wrap everything up, which would mean that they're looking at doing a 2nd season, which would be great. I'd love more of this show. But I could be wrong. They could wrap it up. Who knows? Depends on how good they are at, writing, basically. So I'll be back next week for episode 8. Between now and then, I'll be back with my review of Batwoman. And, if any real news breaks, I might come and do a video on that. Although doing 3 videos a week is kind of tricky. But that's it. So for now, I will just say peace and long life.